Attention women's health professionals. Early bird registration is officially open for FAM, our Fertility Awareness Mastery Mentorship. Classes start on March 26, 2025. FAM is the perfect program for busy women's health professionals who want to offer fertility awareness charting support in their practice. FAM cuts out all the fluff and only focuses on what you need to serve your clients better. Each module, homework assignment, and in-class training and chart review session are there for a reason. Where will you be 9 months from now? With a FAM certification, you'll have a brand new skill set that will allow you to use the menstrual cycle as a diagnostic tool and vital sign in your practice. Your confidence in analyzing and interpreting menstrual cycle charts will be at a level you can't even imagine today. And you'll have a brand new offering in your business that will allow you to reach more clients. This knowledge is truly life-changing for both you and your clients. Transform your practice in 9 months. You won't regret it. Join us this year in FAM. Head over to fertilityfriday.com/FAMLive to apply today. That's fertilityfriday.com/FAMMLIVE. This is the Fertility Friday podcast, episode number 562. If you're a women's health professional and you're looking to elevate your practice this year, today's episode is for you. I'm going to share 2 key areas of specialization that are absolutely essential to take your practice to the next level. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. I won't keep you in suspense. The 2 areas that we are going to be talking about today, 2 areas of specialization, are advanced chart interpretation and fertility. So we're going to dive into why these 2 areas are key to your women's health practice and the opportunity that you're missing out on if you haven't yet specialized in these 2 areas. Now, a lot of people dabble and think that it's specialization. So, if you're working in women's health, you likely have some understanding of these areas, and you may have even had enough of an understanding to kind of work with your own cycle and have your own personal experience, whether it be with charting or with fertility. But when you're working with clients, one of the things I always say is that most of your clients will have cycles or situations, especially pertaining to fertility, that look nothing like yours, nothing like what you went through. And in order to be prepared to support any client that comes to you with a variety of different challenges, this is where the specialization comes in. This is why it's really key to go beyond our personal experience and to really specialize and receive that education, certification in those areas so that we can better serve our clients. I think that if you're working from a place of, well, I charted my own cycles and so I can help others, you're really missing, it's kind of like you just don't know what you don't know. So you're really missing out on an opportunity to help your clients who are going to come to you with situations that you've never even seen before, you didn't even know could happen. So let's dive into the first area of specialization, which is advanced chart interpretation. So one of the things I think that is really key to just this piece of it is that fertility awareness is more than just tracking your cycles, knowing when your period is going to come and being able to tell when you have mucus. There's a much deeper potential when it comes to fertility awareness charting, which is the potential to be able to not only just identify which days are fertile or not and time sex correctly, which is also very important, which we'll get to in a little bit, but to be able to use the menstrual cycle as a vital sign, to be able to look at the cycle and to identify cycle abnormalities and to be able to match those to certain issues that may be happening with your client so that you can gain a greater insight into their overall hormone profile before you've even run any labs. And this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the potential of what you can do when you have your clients charting their cycles in a standardized way. So there's kind of what we think of as cycle charting, which is just like tracking your period and stuff like that. And obviously, there's a lot of value even to just doing that. But as a women's health professional, you can really take that to the next level. So there's a whole other level of cycle charting when we get into detailed, systematized, standardized charting, where we can not only just understand where you are in your cycle, but we can really understand what's happening hormonally and get that snapshot and picture, like I said, before you've even run any labs. So that's something to really think about. And if that's not something that you've specifically trained in and learned in a more standardized setting, then it is an area of missed opportunity with your clients. It goes far deeper than kind of just looking at the cycle and thinking that you kind of know what's going on, to really having a systemized approach to be able to assess what's happening. So one of the things with advanced chart interpretation is that, like I mentioned, it's not just simply looking at a cycle by itself. So I think this is a common misconception that when you understand advanced chart interpretation, you're just going to look at the cycle. Your client is going to give you their chart and you're just going to look at it and it's going to be like a crystal ball and you're just going to know everything that, like, this is not how it works. So there is a lot that we can gain from an individual chart within context when we have a system for how we're gathering information about our clients and knowing how it relates to what we're seeing in the chart. But what I always say as well is that if your client is charting in her own way, there's a lot of different fertility awareness-based methods. There's hundreds of apps now. There's so many different ways to chart. So when your client comes to you with their chart, I mean, it could look like 50 different ways. And also their interpretation of what's happening. I mean, you could have 5 different clients who saw the same type of cervical fluid, for example, and have it show up in 5 different ways on the various charts that people put out there. So when you're working with the menstrual cycle in a specific way and you're wanting to master advanced chart interpretation, it's not just about interpreting whatever your client just gave you without any context or teaching. We want to actually teach our clients, so welcome them into our standardized way of charting so that then we can interpret accurately what they're showing us. And this is a process that takes place over a few cycles where we have to teach our clients, okay, this is how we're charting. These are the types of mucus there are. This is how we track them. And then once they start tracking, we just clarify with them as part of that learning process. Okay, so you marked this down. Tell me a little bit about what you saw that day. Maybe send me a picture so that we're all on the same page. We're all speaking the same language. We've got a standardized system so that now it's not just guessing. We're not in the dark. We can actually identify, okay, so now that you've got the hang of this, I can see that what you're noting is this. And now I can have a much better idea of what's really going on. So that's the first step to advanced chart interpretation. But again, that's kind of the tip of the iceberg. The second step, now that we have it standardized and you have your clients charting in a certain way, is to then use the cycle as a tool. Once your client starts implementing certain changes, once they start to make different changes and alterations to their lifestyle habits or their dietary patterns or whatever the case, we can now look at what is happening in their cycle and compare it to how their cycle started off. And that can be a game changer. I like to think that this is where the true science comes in. This is where true science begins, because we may have preconceived notions of what's going to work for our PCOS clients, or what's going to work for our HA clients, or what's going to work for our endometriosis clients. And when you use the cycle in this way, you get to see with your own eyes, and so does your client in real time, what is actually working. Now, sometimes it can be hard if you decide to, try 10 different things at once, but maybe don't do that and be a little bit more strategic. But this is what I mean. You can actually see in real time what is helping and what is not helping, or what is not moving the needle at all. And what's important about this is that it allows you to have a much more individualized and specialized approach with each of your clients. It prevents you from kind of getting into this mindset that every single client is the same and all I need is this one protocol about each thing, and then I'm just going to put everyone through it and everyone's going to respond the same way. My practice is going to be so easy, and etc. It doesn't work like that. Anyone who has worked with actual human beings for a period of time will attest to the fact that everybody doesn't respond the same way to everything. You can have one client who you create a protocol for and they respond beautifully, very promptly. Their cycles change like almost overnight. It seems like PCOS is a great example of this, where I've had clients who implement certain changes and quite literally the next cycle, their cycles are in normal parameters and it's amazing. But I've also had other PCOS clients who implement similar changes and they don't see this immediate cycle shortening, it takes a little bit longer for them, potentially because they have other confounding factors, other sources of inflammation, other health constraints or different challenges that they are facing that make them a different case than your other client who responded in this other way. So one of the things about advanced chart interpretation and using the cycle in a very specialized way is that it allows you to tailor your approach to your client. It allows you to see what's working in real time. And it allows you to get a lot of information about what's happening hormonally and what's happening in the menstrual cycle and how that could be relating to what's happening with them overall without having to rely primarily on tests to get that information. So if you don't have the cycle, you're kind of blind until you get all of these tests as a baseline. And then you can start kind of like understanding what's going on, and then you can test again and et cetera. But with the menstrual cycle, you have all of this information at your fingertips, and the testing can become much more nuanced, much more specialized. Instead of having to test for everything to get a picture at all, you already have a picture. So you can be very specific about what tests you are ordering, when you're ordering them. And often the testing, it goes from kind of starting blind and wanting to have this information to having a really good sense of what's going on and then testing to kind of confirm your suspicions or to gain more information about the specific nuances of what's happening hormonally in this thing that you're seeing on the cycle. So in the long run, it can save your clients lots of money because the testing can become more nuanced and specialized, and you can work with them in a different kind of way instead of being completely reliant upon certain types of testing. So if this is not something that you're implementing in your practice, like I said, you're missing out on a huge opportunity, not only an opportunity to support your clients, but an opportunity to differentiate yourself in the market. What I have found, the landscape has changed very dramatically since I first started kind of my online presence, so to speak. And there's a lot more noise in the space. There's a lot of people now. When I started this podcast, there were no fertility like, can you imagine? In 2014, when I started this podcast, there was probably like 5 fertility podcasts, like 5. And now there's probably like over 500. And so one of the ways to highlight your skills and to attract the right clients is to specialize. In today's day and age, what makes you different than all the other practitioners who support women with their health and hormones, right? And so having these types of specialized tools really set you apart. Many health professionals have a general understanding of women's health and hormones, but how many can really dial in to their menstrual cycle in this way and support their clients to gain such a deeper understanding of the connection between what's happening hormonally and health-wise to their cycle in real time? So trust me when I say this is not a skill that most practitioners have. And so if this is not something that you're able to offer to your clients, you are missing out on an incredible opportunity. Also, when you're in the women's health space, more and more women are becoming familiar with their cycles and their hormones. So there's so much money going into the femtech industry. So many of your clients are using wearables now, whether it be just like an Oura ring or something to track their temperatures or their sleep patterns or whatever. The space is really exploding. But more and more women are becoming aware of their menstrual cycle. So you're going to get more of these kinds of questions. And having a specialization in this area, it not only sets you apart in the industry and all the things that we were talking about, but it also gives you the confidence to be able to answer these questions. You've probably, if you're a women's health provider and you're listening to this episode today, you've probably already started to get some of these questions or seen certain things on the charts that totally, you just don't know. Like you don't have the ability to actually respond because you don't know the answers, or you haven't seen that particular thing on a cycle before, or you just don't have the training to know like what it even means. And so the more you find yourselves in those situations, the more it's just evident that it's time to specialize, to be able to really have that confidence to lead your clients through these types of situations and provide them with the answers and the support that they're looking for. They really can't get anywhere else. This is not like a common thing. If you're a longtime listener of the podcast, like it feels like a common thing because you've heard it so much in your personal life, but just go outside and go to a party, talk to some friends, and no one talks about this stuff. This is not common knowledge. It's still very specialized knowledge. Okay, so I've talked about the first area of specialization. I mean, I could have talked about it for an hour, but I'm trying to keep it targeted to the specific points that I wanted to make on it. One other thing actually that I wanted to say about the advanced chart interpretation is that it does allow you to go far beyond what your clients can know and understand in tech. So I think the more that the tech space increases and the more tools that we have to be able to track the cycle, I think that there can be these questions of, is this old fashioned? Do we even need this knowledge anymore? But what I can tell you is that, tech has to be programmed. It has limitations. Often period tracker tech specifically, or the tech that boasts and promises that it's going to predict your period. Often those types of tech options, they will flat out tell you that these work best for women whose cycles fall between this and this. If you have a client whose cycles are irregular, who are struggling with some hormone imbalances, who have a variety of symptoms, they may still benefit from those different tech options, but there's often limitations to what they can do with them. So there's always going to be a place for, the actual knowledge of advanced chart interpretation, and especially when we're taking it to that next level of assessment and using it in this kind of diagnostic way. So now that I've kind of gone through the first area of specialization, I want to talk about the second area, which is fertility. So what I found over the last several years of running our Fertility Awareness Mastery mentorship, our FAM program, is that many of our practitioners are joining because they want to specialize in the field of fertility. They want to know more. When we look at some of the stats around fertility, 1 in 6 couples are estimated to struggle with fertility issues. That's 15%. That's quite a bit. That's a lot of people. And in your own personal life, depending on how old you are, I guess your age category, you've probably already started to see there's a lot of couples that struggle with this. It's very, very common. And so regardless of which women's health field that you work in, if you work with enough women, these topics are going to come up. And as a clinician, if you don't have a specialization or background in fertility, it's really going to start kind of, I guess you could say, taking hits at your confidence when your clients are coming to you asking you questions, or you just feel like there's this missed opportunity. I have nothing to offer you because I don't have this area of specialization in my wheelhouse. So there's, 2 aspects of this. One, of course, is the fertility awareness piece. If you are trained and have a certification in teaching fertility awareness, that allows you to support conception clients to have a much more nuanced understanding of correct timing. So there's 2 pieces to the fertility conversation, of course, as it pertains to fertility awareness that I always tell our practitioners. One is simply timing. We have to understand how the cycle works, and we have to know how to identify the best days for sex when you're trying to conceive, even in situations that are outside of the normal. So in some ways, it's easy to tell your clients when to time sex correctly if their mucus patterns are normal and their cycles are regular and all of that, because it's like, oh, your days of clear, stretchy mucus and whatever. But how do you support clients who have limited mucus or maybe have cycles where they're not seeing any? You can still use fertility awareness techniques to show clients how to time sex correctly, even when their parameters or their mucus patterns, for example, or their temperature patterns, for example, are erratic. There's still ways to do that. So, do you have the specialized skills to be able to support your clients kind of in any situation to be able to optimally time sex for conception? And I have an episode coming up, actually the next episode that is coming up, where I go into this question. I recently had a question from one of our FAM practitioners, and she was asking, because in the program, we talk obviously a ton about fertility awareness strategies for conception, but we also talk about the nutritional strategies, the lifestyle strategies to really support egg and sperm quality to optimize your chances of conception. And so her question was, does fertility awareness improve the chances of conception even without any of the other changes? Like just timing, does that in and of itself make an impact on your client's ability to conceive or your own personal ability to conceive? And so the short answer is yes, it does. Because, although fertility, one of the things I always say is that although when it comes to trying to conceive, timing isn't the only factor. There's plenty of couples who are timing correctly, but they may have a specific issue, whether that be a health issue or a specific fertility issue, that even though they're timing it correctly, conception is just not happening. So an example of that would be if sperm quality is really poor or sperm count is really low, for example. You can time it all you want, but if there's no sperm, how are we getting pregnant, right? But with that aside, if you don't have timing, you don't have anything. That's why fertility awareness works as birth control. So although there's often more to the fertility story, especially in couples who've been trying for a significant amount of time, there's often more to the story than just timing. Without timing, you have nothing. So stay tuned for next week's episode where I go into a specific study that looked at how timing can impact your chances of conceiving. Again, without any other interventions, just making sure we have the timing right. So that episode is going to be super interesting. But back to the specialization in fertility. So what I would say is that I mentioned the first piece, which of course is the fertility awareness aspect. Now, again, if you're a regular listener to the podcast, or if you yourself have charted your cycles using fertility awareness for a long time, what can happen is that we can start to forget that no one else knows this stuff. Although the fertility awareness world is getting bigger and more people are teaching and aware than ever, it's still not your average person. We still haven't hit critical mass. I will continue to say this until I really feel like we've hit critical mass. I mean, I've been talking about this stuff for decades. And I still, when I go into my personal life and I go to my get-togethers, friends, people are not like, this is not a thing, okay? Your average person does not know anything about charting. Your average person, even your average friend who is trying to conceive, they may be more likely to know about some things. They might know about the ovulation strips, but in terms of like the deep dive into how the cycle works, how the mucus plays into this, the temperature shifts, and even the fact that there's a 6-day window for conception that ends on ovulation day, and you can identify what that is by tracking these signs. Like, this is not standard knowledge. So I think this is a message for all women's health professionals. Just don't take for granted that your clients know this stuff. And many of you have had that experience already where you kind of like are reminded that people don't know, whether it be if you're out and about, you go to a conference, you strike up a conversation with someone. This is, again, I can't stress enough, this is not common knowledge. So if this is an area, if you're working in women's health and you have clients that are trying to conceive, if you don't have specific training in fertility awareness specifically so that you can support your clients to optimize their chances of conception with the timing piece of it, again, you're missing out on a huge opportunity. The research is clear that conception can only happen when sex takes place within this window. And so for some couples, literally because of all the kind of rhythm method stuff that's in our heads, the 28-day cycle, 14-day ovulation, day 14 ovulation kind of mantra, there are a percentage of women and couples who just need to time it and they're going to get pregnant. So if you don't have that area of specialization, you're missing out on a huge opportunity. But of course, that is a part of the conversation. It's an essential part, but it's not the only part. When we look at more stats, this is something that I've talked about on the podcast quite a bit. Male sperm counts have declined more than 70% over the past 2 generations. As a women's health professional, you get it. You already know the value of menstrual cycle tracking. But I'm guessing that you're not entirely comfortable interpreting complex charts, weird mucus patterns, abnormal bleeding, or other similar and unusual situations. You're passionate about fertility awareness and you want to use it in your practice, but you're not sure where to start. And this is where FAM comes in. Registration is now open for our Fertility Awareness Mastery Mentorship Program. The next class starts in a few short weeks. We're starting on the 26th of March, 2025. By the time you finish your FAM certification, you'll have the skills to confidently teach fertility awareness to your clients, interpret all kinds of complex charting scenarios, and you'll have the step-by-step protocols you need to help your clients improve their hormone and menstrual cycle health. Registration is only open for a short time, so apply today at fertilityfriday.com/FAMLive. That's fertilityfriday.com/FAMMLIVE. Transform your practice in 9 months. Join us in FAM. Again, that's fertilityfriday.com/FAMMLIVE. Now let's go ahead and jump back into today's episode. And this trend seems to be continuing in a downward direction. We know that the quality of food has significantly changed over the years. We're eating a significantly higher percentage of processed food. We know that the soil nutrients have been depleted. And so even the nutrients that we're getting in much of our produce is significantly less than what our grandparents and great grandparents would have been eating. So we also know that there's a huge influx of chemicals. I think it's between 5,000 and 8,000 new chemicals a day, some of which mimic the effects of estrogen and cause havoc with regards to our hormone balance. There's a lot of different challenges that our population is facing as a whole, not just the sperm issue, but there is kind of this looming, if the downward trend continues, are we going to get to the point that a lot of men don't even have a sufficient amount of sperm? So we do have these bigger issues as well. So when I talk about specializing in fertility, it's marrying that base of fertility awareness knowledge so we can give our clients the practical strategies for optimizing their chances of conception. So literally just understanding how the body works and when to time things and what it all means, and to be able to track so that we can understand. And instead of the typical advice, which is like, oh, just have sex every other day or just have more sex. Like that is not evidence-based. There's no research to indicate that having sex on random days is beneficial. In Real Food for Fertility, in the conception chapter, I shared a research study that showed that there's about a 3% chance of getting pregnant if you have sex on just a random day of the cycle. 3% compared to up to 30% chance of conception if you have sex on the peak day, essentially, or ovulation day, or the day closest to ovulation. So again, there's a lot of misinformation out there. And as a women's health professional, it's really up to you to equip yourself with the knowledge to support your clients. And if you are not specialized in that area, fertility awareness, as just a baseline, then you're missing out on a huge opportunity. And so are your clients. Because again, it's easy to assume that they know. But from years of working in this field, they don't know. Even if they are charting and they fully have charts that they're monitoring, they have questions. There's more nuance. And their cycles often, most women who come to you for support, their cycles may not be optimal. That's why they're coming to you for support, right? If their cycles were optimal and if everything was happening normally, they wouldn't really be at your door asking for help. So again, these are all factors to take into consideration. But in addition to the fertility awareness piece, what about the other piece? How do we support our clients to optimize their fertility nutritionally? How do we kind of use the menstrual cycle as a diagnostic to identify areas of opportunity? How do we identify if there's hormone imbalances? How do we identify if there's issues with progesterone production? And if there's a way to kind of strategize to improve overall hormone balance for our clients, to improve some of those menstrual issues, or to even identify issues that are not being identified by their primary care providers. There's a huge issue with this concept of unexplained infertility, where couples are not necessarily being investigated in a holistic way, you could say, or in a functional way, where no one's looking at the menstrual cycle. So again, in a world where no one's looking at the menstrual cycle, and you can have clients that have gone to multiple providers and not one of them has asked them anything about what's going on with their periods, this is an area that you're not specialized in, then it's a huge missed opportunity. And, fertility is a challenging field to be in because it's not like you can ethically say, like, I'm 100% going to get you pregnant. You can't do that because you can't know that. But one of the benefits of being able to integrate the cycle piece into the conversation is that instead of now kind of going blind or having to rely initially primarily on testing and kind of having to test broadly to identify what the issue is, when you have that cycle data, you can really quickly zone in on the areas of opportunity. And one of the things I always say to our providers is, one of the reasons I have such a strong emphasis on improving and supporting sperm quality so that we're really getting that foundational nutritional and lifestyle piece there for both parties is because when you are tracking your clients' cycles, or when they're tracking it, and that's part of how you operate with clients, I always used to say that when I started tracking my cycles, I was super young, so I was still like a teenager. I was in my late teens when I discovered fertility awareness charting. And throughout my 20s, I personally was using this method for birth control. And so in my mind, that was when you are young and you're using the method for birth control, your whole thing is to not allow any type of unprotected sex to happen in that window, because when you're avoiding, the mindset is, oh my goodness, if anything ever were to happen, if a condom were to break, whatever, if you were to look at me too intently, that I would just be pregnant immediately, right? Like this is kind of like the mindset. So when I started working with clients who were trying to conceive, and I'm seeing on their charts, confirming, are you putting all of the acts of intercourse on the chart? And you're seeing them put the actual, okay, they're having sex in the window, the time when in your imagination, that would mean that you would be pregnant, over and over, cycle after cycle, and nothing is happening. It makes you question the very nature of reality. I mean, honestly, because based on everything you were taught in the books, the pregnancy should be happening. So this is why the charting piece is so essential. It really clarifies that timing is essential, but it's not everything. There's more to the story, and it provides more evidence, more compelling information to look deeper into what's really going on. And what I found is that although your clients are working with a variety of providers, very few have this perspective on what's happening. And very few are pushing for that further and additional investigation of their partner. So having that specialization, skills, and tools to be able to actually assess that and educate your clients about this so that they're more informed, so that they have the ability to actually do something. And not only that, to be able to track what's happening in their cycle in real time. This is one of the kind of last just kind of aspects of these two areas of specialization combined when you add in the charting piece that I want to highlight. So one of the challenges when working with clients is, how do I motivate them to actually make the changes that are required? Now, when you're working with fertility clients, there's often a lot of motivation there, but your fertility clients may get fatigued. I mean, your fertility clients have tried everything. They are willing to do what they need to do to make this happen. So one of the questions as a women's health professional you have to ask yourself is, well, how can I motivate my clients? How can I encourage them along the way? And when I'm working with a client who didn't just magically respond in cycle 1 to all of the things that I recommended, how can I encourage them to stick with it for the longer term that it might be required for them to see those changes? And cycle charting is an incredible motivational tool with clients, because again, it's not just about having them chart whatever they want, however they want, and looking at one chart and thinking it's a crystal ball. It's a process of teaching a standardized way of doing it and then tracking what they're doing and monitoring how the cycle responds. So this may be the first time in your client's life where they realize that they have the power to improve their hormones and their cycle in very tangible ways. So although it's not likely that you're going to go from 55-day cycles, all kinds of mucus abnormalities or super low progesterone, super short luteal phase, to just this perfect cycle in one cycle. What happens is when you are actually addressing the issues that are contributing to the hormone imbalance or to the cycle irregularities, you start to see the shift. Like you might see the shift from 52 days to like 42 days. You might see a difference. You might see that the luteal phase improves. You might see a change in the cervical mucus patterns. You might see an earlier ovulation. And although it's not like the first cycle, you're going to see the whole change because the story has to unfold for however long it's going to take, right? How long did it take your cycles to get to the state that they are? It's not just going to take like 5 minutes to reverse everything, right? But as your client sees that, then it becomes a lot less about you being like this magical expert that just has all the answers and you're just going to tell them what to do and they're just going to be the passive observer and whatever, and they just have to trust you. It goes from that to a totally different way of working with clients, where instead of it being like the medical system, which is like you go to the doctor, their doctor is God, they have all the answers, they're going to tell you what to do. And if you don't listen, you're bad and whatever, even if what they're saying doesn't work, like you still have to listen. When you are using the menstrual cycle in this way with your clients, it really changes that conversation and it allows your clients to build and increase their trust in what you're actually saying to them. Because it's not just like they have to just believe you because you said it. They can actually see whether or not the menstrual cycle is shifting. And it can be incredibly empowering to actually see those results. It's not always that we can actually see those shifts and recognize in real time that by me making the changes to my sleep habits, or by me making those changes to my dietary habits, or whatever the case is, by me stopping drinking 3 cups of coffee every day, whatever it is, you can actually see like, oh my goodness, like I kind of doubted what you said. I didn't think that it was going to do anything. But then after I did XYZ, like we can clearly see this shift in the cycle. And even if you're not sure if that exact thing caused that exact result because it's only been that one cycle or whatever, you can continue to do experiments throughout the process to see, well, what happens if you add it back? What happens if whatever? And through this process, it's highly motivating for clients. So because I've always worked this way with clients, because this is obviously what I do, I've been able to take that for granted. But I often wonder, if you don't have that, how does that affect your ability to motivate your clients? Not to say that there aren't other ways. There's lots of different ways to motivate, but I've just found it to be an incredibly useful way of tracking in real time. And like I said, with this can also be done with testing, because of course you can do tests at the beginning and you can do tests in the middle and at the end, but it really depends on your clientele. A lot of my clients don't necessarily want to drop all the money all the time for all the tests, and so a lot of clients will kind of do some, but not others, or they'll decide what they want to do. But with this modality, like I said, the testing that is part of your practice can be a lot more nuanced and specific and done to kind of help clarify and further deepen your understanding of what you're seeing in the chart, as opposed to being more of a blanket general thing. And it may, in some cases, reduce the absolute number that you would run, because you can be a lot more nuanced about certain things. So definitely a lot to think about. So to recap, the 2 main areas of specialization that I feel are essential when you're working in women's health are, advanced chart interpretation and fertility. And of course, this is the reason that I created the FAM program, our Fertility Awareness Mastery Mentorship Program. So, after decades of working with clients, it got to a point where the most common question I was being asked in my emails and my DMs was, I work with women. I want to be able to do this. Can you teach me how to teach other women fertility awareness? How do I add this to my practice with women? So this program really came out of that need. And although there are a variety of fertility awareness training programs, their primary focus is to teach fertility awareness, not to deepen your knowledge of advanced chart interpretation strategies or the kind of concept of using the menstrual cycle as a vital sign and providing you with the specific tools and protocols to manage a variety of different situations, the step-by-step approaches for how to not only assess and interpret the chart, but how to actually support your clients to achieve optimal hormone balance. And this is exactly the gap that the FAM program fills. So this type of knowledge and support is not available anywhere. And one of the reasons I wanted to share this episode with you today is because our next round of FAM is actually opening very, very soon. Registration is officially opened now for our spring cohort, spring of 2025. We are actually starting our next program on the 26th of March, and we have our early bird registration open until the 7th of March. So if you are listening to this episode in real time and this has piqued your interest, if you've had your eye on the FAM program for some time and you're wanting that kind of extra nudge, or you're waiting for that message from, from the heavens to tell you that now is the right time, then I would certainly take this episode as that gentle nudge. We have a lot of applications already going in. We do have a limited number of spots available. So absolutely make sure to get in that application, fertilityfriday.com/famlive, FAMMLIVE, for additional details about that. And we've had this program going for the last 4 years, which is incredible. We've had well over 50 participants go through the program, and we are constantly refining it, adding more information. And so at this stage, we just have a really solid curriculum, a solid list of protocols, and for a variety of different situations for our practitioners. So everything that we talked about today in terms of mastering advanced chart interpretation, using the menstrual cycle as a vital sign, supporting your clients with fertility challenges, combining the fertility awareness knowledge to be effective, supporting your clients to get that timing right, regardless of whether or not their cycles are irregular. So even if they have PCOS cycles that are 50, 60, 70 days long, we can still help them to optimize timing, even in the face of whatever situation there is. But in addition to that, we have a variety of specific protocols that take it deeper to really optimize fertility through nutritional and lifestyle means, supporting egg and sperm quality, and all of the things that we spoke about today. So I just wanted to share a little bit about the program for those of you who may not have heard about it before. It's our Fertility Awareness Mastery Mentorship Program. And again, details can be found at fertilityfriday.com/famlive. And if you are listening in real time, we are starting our next class on the 26th of March, and I can't wait to see you there. One thing I will mention is that this program is designed for women's health professionals, either who have an existing practice, or we've also taken students in the past who have recently graduated from their women's health professional programs. So this program is designed for women's health professionals. And if you're not sure if your credentials match, then make sure to apply. So fertilityfriday.com/FAMMLIVE. One thing to consider as well, what it always astounds me to read these stats and read papers that talk about this. There are thousands of new peer-reviewed research papers published every single day. However, it takes on average anywhere from 10 to 20 years for the original research to be adopted into routine medical practice. So if you're ever wondering, why is there a need for this type of information? It is because it takes decades for the latest research to become part of practice. This is one of the reasons why the research aspect is an obsession of mine, and it is a very important and strong part of the FAM program. So if any of you have read any of my books or even just listening to the FAM research series, I spend a great deal of time reading what's coming out and reviewing, obviously for the purpose of writing, for creating content for our FAM practitioners. And one of the things that sets our program apart is that all of the different protocols, all of the different recommendations that we have for our clients within the program, we provide the full text, not just the citation, but the full text paper. So, you don't have to go and read every single full text paper, because that would be all that you're doing for, the rest of life, because we have a lot of information. But when you are applying a specific protocol or looking at a specific recommendation, if you have any questions about it, or if you're wanting to gain more information, or just wanting to make sure that you feel really confident in that, you can actually go to those full text papers and learn about how they did that research and what the results were, so that you really know where it all comes from. I think that really sets apart what we do versus your typical client's experience in the real world. So even think about your personal experiences. When you go to the doctor, you're told to do XYZ, but you're never really provided with much of a rationale. And if you ask any questions, the answers are not necessarily about the research that they did to give them the information. They're often a little bit kind of irritated that you're even asking the question to begin with. So we want to be the opposite of that. And that's certainly what we aim to do with our programming. So with that said, I hope that you have an amazing weekend, or whenever you're tuning into the show. If you have any questions about the program, like I said, if you're wanting to know if you're a good fit based on your professional designation, all the things, you can also email us, info@fertilityfriday.com, and we'd love to chat with you. So I hope you have a wonderful week. And as always, until next time, be well and happy charting. And that's a wrap. If you're loving the Fertility Friday podcast, then I know you'll love our Fertility Awareness Mastery Mentorship Program. It's a 9-month immersive experience that will completely transform the way you work with clients, allowing you to not only teach fertility awareness, but to use the menstrual cycle as a vital sign and diagnostic tool in your women's health practice. Our next class starts on the 26th of March, so there's still time to reserve your spot. There's no other program like this offered anywhere. Transform your practice in 9 months. Head over to fertilityfriday.com/famlive to apply now. That's fertilityfriday.com/FAMMLIVE. Join us in FAM. This is your year, and we can't wait to have you. Again, that's fertilityfriday.com/FAMMLIVE.